how God speaks through dreams, shocking truth revealed, spiritual meaning of dreams. You wake up at 3:17 a.m. Your heart is racing. Your breath is uneven. Your hands are cold. And the strange part, you are crying, but you don't know why. You just had a dream. But this wasn't like any other dream. It felt alive. A voice calling your name. A path you've never seen before. A door you were not supposed to open. And the moment you stepped closer, everything went silent. Now here's what will shock you. What if that dream was not your imagination? What if it was a message? And even more terrifying, what if you've been ignoring it your whole life? Because tonight, you are about to discover something most people never understand before it's too late. God may have already been speaking to you in the only language your heart can't ignore. And the question is, have you been listening? Because some dreams don't come to entertain you. Some dreams come to warn you. Some come to guide you. And some come to change your destiny forever. Stay with me until the end, because what you are about to hear may completely transform the way you see your life, your sleep, and your faith forever. The tea started long before you were born. In the beginning, when Jacob lay down on a cold stone in Genesis 28 verse 12. He didn't expect anything supernatural to happen that night. He was running, broken, confused, alone. But when he slept, he saw a ladder reaching heaven, angels ascending and descending, and God speaking directly into a life that fell forgotten. That moment didn't just comfort Jacob, it redirected his entire destiny. Now think about this carefully. If God once spoke through dreams in the most critical moments of human history, why would he stop now? But here is where the mystery deepens. Not every dream is random. Not every image is meaningless. And not every night is just rest. Some nights are encounters. And the tragedy is, most people wake up too fast to realize it. They scroll their phone. They forget. They dismiss it as just a dream. But in the Bible, dreams were never treated lightly. Joseph didn't ignore his dreams, even when they made no sense, even when they brought him trouble, even when his own family turned against him because of them. Genesis 37 shows us something disturbing. The young man sees visions of destiny, and instead of celebration, it brings rejection. Why? Because divine messages often look confusing before they look clear. And that's the first truth you must understand. Not every message from God will feel comfortable at first. Some will disturb you before they guide you. And some will break your current life before they build your future. Joseph later stood before Pharaoh in Genesis 41. Not because he understood dreams, but because God gave him the ability to interpret what others could not see. Now ask yourself something deeply. What if your confusion is not a problem, but a process? What if the dream you cannot understand right now is not meant to be understood immediately? Daniel 2:19 reveals something even more powerful. Daniel received understanding of mysteries in the night, not in daylight, not in comfort, but in the quiet hidden place where no one else was watching. That means something shocking. The night is not empty. It is active, and spiritually speaking, it is not silent. When you sleep, you're not disconnected. You're simply in another dimension of awareness. And in that place, something may be happening that your waking mind cannot yet process. This is why some dreams feel different. They carry weight, emotion, fear, peace, or even warnings that linger long after you wake up. Have you ever had a dream that stayed with you all day, like it refused to leave your mind? That is not random, because the human spirit does not easily forget what it recognizes as significant. But here is where things become even more intense. Not all dreams are about prediction. Some are about direction. Imagine standing at a crossroads in life, confused about your future, praying silently for answers. Then you fall asleep, and in the dream, you see a road. One side is dark, the other is glowing with light. You don't hear words, but you feel something deeply inside. Go this way. Now you wake up confused. Was it just imagination or guidance? Proverbs 3:6 says God will direct your paths. But many forget something important. Direction doesn't always come as a loud voice. Sometimes it comes as an impression, that a symbol, that a feeling, that a dream that doesn't leave you. But here's the danger. When guidance is ignored repeatedly, confusion becomes stronger and silence becomes heavier. Because sometimes God does not shout, that He waits. Not because He is absent, but because He is asking you to. Notice, and this is where most people miss their turning point in life. They expect God to speak only in miracles, but ignore the subtle ways He already does. That a verse that repeats. You thought the mystery ended when you woke up, but what if waking up is exactly where the message begins? Because not everything God speaks is meant to stay inside dreams. Some of it follows you into reality, into conversations you didn't expect, into decisions you thought were ordinary, into moments that feel too perfectly timed to be coincidence. And if you pay attention closely enough, you start to realize something unsettling. Life itself begins to feel like a message, not random, not chaotic, but layered, intentional, and deeply personal. There are moments when you are awake, fully conscious, and suddenly something happens inside you. That a thought appears without explanation, that a direction feels right without logic, that a warning rises in your spirit, even when everything looks fine on the outside. This is where dreams end and something deeper begins. Because according to Scripture, God does not limit His communication to sleep. In Acts 10, Peter is not dreaming in the traditional sense when he receives a vision that changes the entire direction of early Christianity. That he is awake, praying, and suddenly something opens in his inner perception, that he sees something that challenges everything he believed was fixed. That is the moment many people misunderstand, because divine communication does not only arrive as images at night. Sometimes it arrives as disruption in the middle of your certainty. Peter sees a vision that contradicts his comfort zone, and that is exactly why it is divine, because real transformation rarely feels convenient. That it feels confronting. That it forces you to question what you assumed was permanent, and then it leads you somewhere greater. But here is the part people struggle with. Not every impression is loud. Some are extremely subtle, almost too quiet to notice. That a thought to call someone you haven't spoken to in years, that a sudden discomfort about a decision that looked perfect on paper, that a strong pull towards something you cannot logically explain. Most people dismiss these moments. They call it intuition, or coincidence, or overthinking. But Scripture describes something deeper. John 16:13 speaks of a guiding spirit leading into truth, not forcing, not shouting, but guiding. And guidance can be missed if you're only looking for noise. Sometimes the most important direction in your life will feel like a whisper inside confusion. And if you are not still enough, you will miss it completely. But there is another layer that begins to appear when you walk through life with awareness, patterns, repetition, cycles that refuse to stop until something changes inside you. You may notice the same type of conflict showing up in different relationships, the same financial pressure appearing in different seasons, the same emotional struggle repeating under different names. First, it feels like bad luck. Then it feels like coincidence, but eventually, it starts to feel like something is trying to get your attention. In Deuteronomy 2 verse 3, God tells Israel something striking. You have circled this mountain long enough. That is not just history. That is revelation. Because sometimes life is not moving forward, not because you are abandoned, but because something within you has not yet changed. The cycle continues. Not to punish you, but to reveal you. Because repetition is not always delay. Sometimes repetition is instruction. That it is God highlighting something you keep avoiding, something you keep missing, something you keep ignoring because it is uncomfortable to face. And here's the hard truth: if you don't learn from the pattern becomes your prison. But when you finally understand it, it becomes your breakthrough. And this is where another mysterious way of divine communication appears: closed doors. Few things feel more disappointing than a door shutting in your face. That a job you wanted, that a relationship you prayed for, that an opportunity you believed was perfect, gone, denied, closed. And at first, it feels like rejection. But later, when you look back, you realize something strange. That closed door may have saved you from something you couldn't see. Proverbs 3:6 reminds us that God directs paths, not just destinations, which means even interruptions are part of guidance, even delays are part of design, even endings are part of protection. Joseph understood this in a way most people never fully grasp. Sold, rejected, imprisoned, forgotten. Every stage looked like failure, but every stage was actually positioning. Because what looked like abandonment was actually alignment. And when the right moment came, he didn't just survive his story, that he ruled inside it. Now think deeply. How many closed doors in your life were actually protection? How many no answers were actually rescue? You may never know in a moment, but clarity often comes in hindsight. And that is where faith is tested. Not when everything makes sense, but when nothing does. Because trusting God is not about understanding the process, that it is about believing there is meaning inside it. Even in silence, especially in silence, because silence is one of the most misunderstood forms of divine communication, that we assume silence means absence. But Scripture suggests something very different. That in 1 Kings 19, Elijah expects God in wind, earthquake, and fire. But God is not in the dramatic. He is in the stillness, the quiet whisper, the subtle presence. And that changes everything. Because it means silence is not empty. It is intentional. It is a space where noise is removed so something deeper can be perceived. But most people panic in silence. They rush to fill it with distraction, with noise, with answers that are too quick. But silence is not punishment. It is invitation. An invitation to trust without visible confirmation. To walk without immediate explanation. To believe without constant evidence. And in those seasons, something unexpected often happens. Your sensitivity increases. You begin noticing things you ignored before. That a message in a sermon suddenly feels personal. That a verse you've read before suddenly feels alive. That a song suddenly speaks directly to your situation. Even ordinary conversations start carrying unusual meaning. And that is when life begins to feel different. Because awareness changes perception. But there is still more. Because sometimes God speaks not through absence, but through presence, through people. Someone appears in your life at the exact moment you needed help. That a stranger says something that answers a question you never asked out loud. That a friend shows up with encouragement you didn't know you needed. Proverbs 27:17 describes this mystery clearly. Iron sharpening iron. Meaning people are often instruments of refinement, not accidental, not random, but positioned. And sometimes the person who speaks into your life is not aware they are part of something bigger. But their timing reveals it anyway. And if you reflect honestly, you can probably think of moments where someone's words felt like more than coincidence, like they were speaking directly into something unseen. That is what makes life spiritually complex. Not everything is supernatural in appearance, but many things are supernatural in timing. And then there are moments that feel even more intense. Supernatural protection, not a decision you almost made, but something stopped you down a path you almost took. But something inside resisted, that a situation you narrowly avoided without knowing why. Later you discover what could have happened. And suddenly you realize something was guiding you away from danger you could not yet see. Psalm 91 speaks about protection that operates beyond awareness. Meaning not all protection is visible in real time. Some of it is only understood after the fact. And that realization often leads to gratitude, because you begin to see how many times you were carried without realizing it. But here's the final layer most people overlook. Even emotions can be communication, that a peace that arrives in chaos, that a conviction that doesn't leave you alone, that a pull toward change that keeps returning. Or even a song that keeps repeating in your mind at the exact moment you need strength. Music has a strange way of carrying meaning deeper than words alone, that a lyric can enter your heart when advice cannot, that a melody can calm what explanation cannot fix. And sometimes in those moments, you realize, even in your most ordinary day, something is still speaking, not always loudly, but consistently, not always visibly, but intentionally. And now everything begins to connect. Dreams, impressions, patterns, people, closed doors, silence, peace, songs, moments that don't feel random anymore. They begin to form a larger picture. Not chaos, but communication. Not confusion, but calling. And the question is no longer whether God speaks. The question becomes, are you noticing how he speaks to you? Because the danger was never that God stopped speaking. The danger is that life became too loud to notice it, too fast to reflect, too distracted to discern, too busy to listen. And yet, even now, even in this moment, something may still be reaching you, that a thought you didn't expect, that a feeling you cannot explain, that a reminder you didn't ask for. Because divine guidance rarely announces itself like noise, that it arrives like awareness. And awareness changes everything. That it changes how you see your past. It changes how you interpret your present. And it changes how you prepare for your future. And maybe that is the real message behind everything you just read. Not fear, not mystery for the sake of mystery, but awakening. Because once you realize that your life may not be random, you stop walking blindly. You start reflecting, you start listening, you start noticing, and slowly you begin to see purpose even in places you once called confusion. And as this awareness grows inside you, one truth becomes impossible to ignore: nothing meaningful in your life has ever truly been without direction. Even the moments you misunderstood may have been leading you somewhere all along. And now the story returns to you, not as a spectator, but as a participant, because what you choose to do with awareness is where transformation begins. And maybe the next step was never about seeing more signs. Maybe it was about finally responding to the ones you already saw. This is the message. This is the journey. And this is the moment where everything shifts from hearing to understanding to finally walking differently. If this message spoke to you, don't ignore it and move on like it was nothing. Reflect on it, carry it with you, and let it challenge the way you see your life from this moment forward. This is Light Up Faith, and if you are still here, you were meant to hear this until the end.